All right, it's 6:30. I'll bring the meeting to order. First up, modifications and changes to the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add? If there's nothing to change, we will move on to public comment. Is there anybody here from the public tonight? I don't think so. Everyone has an item, right? Yeah. All right. Up next, review and approval for minutes January 25th and the special meeting on February 1st. If everyone had a chance to look those over and didn't see any errors, I will hear a motion to accept them both.
I'll move we accept.
Sandy with the first, is there a second?
Second.
Eli with the second, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right, up next, Downtown Transportation Fund Grant Application Request with FCIDC and EI. Is that you, Jim?
It is.
Good evening.
Myself and Elizabeth.
Evening, Elizabeth.
She's on screen.
I apologize, my camera's not, I had it on, so I do apologize.
No problem, we can hear you.
Relatively quick setup is that we went through phase 1 and phase 2 of Vital Village, and we're at phase 2.5. We have an opportunity to apply for a grant for March 7th. There were some projects that were out there, in particular the crosswalks at Dickinson Avenue that are qualified for that, for the grant, for the March 7th grant. Our group got together and talked about it. We came up with some ideas and thoughts. We've acted on a handful of them. And I may have been, I'm gonna use a lot of careful words tonight in particular because I'm being recorded and that'll help me back out of things later, but I may have been premature in only giving you the one plan, but I believe right now this is the front runner of, if you will recall, there were 4 options. And so this is at this point the front runner that we're talking about. And then Elizabeth, some information came in about 3:30 or so, and I didn't get it to you, so there's a slight change of things that you won't be aware of. If you remember at the last time, so we brought, I came for EI, if you will, and brought this to you. We talked about it at our meeting. We've had a subsequent meeting about it. Tim Smith has supplied Elizabeth's time to write the grant, so there's no cost to get the grant out the door. And Greta is also being really helpful and supportive, and so is Julia from the engineering firm. They've all been talking and working to put this together, to come up with a budget and follow through on the things that are there. And then this afternoon, we heard, if you recall, one of the options was to close off the center entrance at the downtown shopping center, and the owner declines. That's what I heard this afternoon, later in the day. And so with that, what you have in front of you is fundamentally the plan that I just passed out is more or less item 3 that was, or option 3 that was so labeled, if you will. You see my handwriting on top. So it's pretty straightforward, I think. And we have to still sort out some things, and that is whether this is going to be a temporary quick build or a permanent quick build, and we'll know that shortly. And what I mean by that is this could be laid out temporarily, or we could cut the curbs and put in the ADA crosswalks, that kind of stuff. But we could still do the planters, we could still do the line striping, we could still change everything to the right, to the north.
And the guardrail's like funny.
Right, yeah, so then it's sort of got a 3A and a 3B, and the ballpark that they're working for a number, by the way, is $10,000. That's coming from Greta, talking to Elizabeth, et cetera, about that being the case. My guess is that's permanent because they're really talking about 4 planters and some site, some line striping. There's not a lot of heavy lifting there in that particular area.
Permanent planters, or they
Movable. They're the round, in our mind so far, to be determined, that they'd be the round concrete, that are pebbled, that look like they're stone, that would literally be planters. You'd pick them up and set them there. And so it's meant to slow the traffic down. It's meant to be a better safe crosswalk. It hits straight into some handrails, not into the middle of sort of 3 openings of things that are happening.
Jim, how would that work in wintertime? Do we move those like wintertime for plowing?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
So this is on the north side of Dickinson?
correct. Yeah, and there still is a plan out there that the group was still discussing that had it to the south of Dickinson. But in particular, now that we can't close off that middle entrance, I'm pretty sure this is where, what we would recommend. can start and will end with the fact that you have to agree to all this. The trustees vote on this. This is not something that a volunteer group could say, we're gonna do this or whatever. You're actually the applicant for the grant. And there's a match, and it's 20%, and it can be in kind, meaning it can be services, not just, you know. Yeah, it's okay. And I'm gonna stop in just 1 second, let you go. Hang on just a sec, Elizabeth, and I'll stop, honest to God. And let's see, so with what we just found out this afternoon, we have a meeting next Thursday, meaning that we would come back to you at your next meeting and say, here's what we'd like you to vote on, please. Here's the plan, here's the budget, and you give authorization for Elizabeth to finalize and submit the grant if she needs John's signature or whatever. That's what we would do. And I do need to say one more thing, Elizabeth, want to, and that is, so the other part of this is Vital Village 3, you know, like the big one. Greta is in front of that, and that comes out in the spring and is ready and able to write all those grants and put all that in motion, all the things that you have seen before. Nothing, it's not like there's a new thing, it's really getting that thing to get it priced out and engineered. Elizabeth, go ahead, thanks.
I just wanted to kind of touch base on the in-kind, on the match. It is 20%. So if you were to, as Jim said, there is in-kind, so whatever work is done with the installation, we do take into account hiring somebody to design the actual installation and to do the permitting, so that would be included in the 10,000. If you didn't do in kind and it was 10,000, it's 2,000 out of the village's pocket. So I think it's and I'm not a resident of Enosburg, so I don't want to pretend that I'm a taxpayer, but it's $2,000 at most without any in kind. So I think for the safety purposes, I think it's a good investment. And I'm happy to help if you decide to move forward with the grant.
This grant is strictly for this one portion of the project, correct?
It's one that happens to qualify. And maybe on a positive note, to tell you that at some point, you folks made the downtown a designated downtown, and that allows us to qualify for this round of money. If I said that correctly, and I believe I did.
The crosswalk that goes from Main to Main, is that roughly in front of the real estate office? So it goes over closer to La Rosa's
Correct.
when it ends on the other side.
I can report that Sean spoke with Sean about his shopping center. Also came to pass in our mind that we found out that we think that, and you may know, that there's also a Pomerlo parking lot there that relates to the pharmacy that's stuck back there. That whole thing there is, if you look down at it, it's the shopping center, Pomerlo, and then Mark, right? I'm assuming Mark's footprint is close to what he utilizes. I also spoke to Mark LaRose about this, about both things closing off that section, and I didn't mention it here, but I have a personal bias that we'll discuss and we'll come back and we'll agree or not agree, and that's where the Pomerlo thing came up. Is that there's a general agreement in our group, and maybe with you folks as well, that this whole thing is a mess. Having three road cuts, one 100 feet long with sidewalk and people coming and going. And if someone came to get this permitted, you couldn't get it permitted today, right? You couldn't do this. You couldn't have this many road cuts that close to each other on a state highway. It just would, that's a fact. I mean, I'm really, I'm preaching or agitated or something, but, so I'd also like to look at, and I haven't taken the measurements, but I'll do that to Mark, and that is to think about planters on the west side of the highway moving north, again, to sort of tighten up that space where people are coming and going out onto the road, that it's not literally 50 or 75 feet wide. I'm paraphrasing Mark that he agrees it's a mess, that area is a mess, that it just creates all kinds of confusion for people, especially visitors who don't frequent the space. They're kind of like, where am I going and how am I going to get in and out of this place?
And that was discussed in the walking tour that we took for the original Vital Village.
Correct, yeah. And it hasn't, I don't think it's on 1 or 1A or 2 for some reason, but it's clearly that whole thing was redesigned. And these are considered the quick build elements. There may be other things that I'm forgetting that were in the whole Vital Village about making that different, but, idea was to slow traffic down, make it a safer crosswalk. And really, those are the two. Don't help me out if I'm wrong, anybody.
I think the biggest thing was the safety thing.
Yeah, so, that's where we are, thank you. I mean, I could talk all night about it, but I want to be respectful of your time, answer any questions. I can go on for too long, I get that.
So to go along with that, with this paper, you sent an email outlining exactly what Enosburg Initiative would be asking for, right?
Well, we sent you a letter for tonight, isn't that right?
There's,
You
it's,
have a summary that was written by Elizabeth Nance that is in your packet. And as well as that,
Yeah,
there's
I
some
signed it.
additional correspondence via email between Elizabeth, Jim, and myself that gives some discussion about the project and some answers from both Jim and Elizabeth to some of the questions.
On the back of the February 1st
Right.
yeah, there you go.
So this is the summary that was written by Elizabeth. And then if you flip over in your packet, you'll see some of the email correspondence between Elizabeth, Jim, and myself, asking different questions. And then in addition to that, you have this sheet, which Jim just provided this evening. Sorry, Heather, you don't have a copy of
I
this.
just sent her
There's
a
an
picture
extra
of
one
it.
here.
I got one.
Oh, you did get one?
I just sent her a picture of it.
Oh, you did, okay. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Johnny on the spot.
So you've got
Sneaky like
all of those things together on this agenda item.
Okay.
And this came out of the last scope, I believe this is scoping study, is that where you took this from? This came out of the scoping study that was completed in October, this past October, that you guys as the Board of Trustees approved a design for in September.
So you'll come back to us next meeting with the, I guess, finalized request?
Yeah, it's due to be turned in by March 7th, and, loosely speaking, we'd be done at the end of the month, and you have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight, so we'll come to you, I believe we'll come to you with a proposal that will say something with a date on it, saying here's why we're proposing it, and then we'll take Elizabeth's outline and fill in the holes. The money, the timing, whatever,
Yeah, I would expect that we would have, if you decide to move forward, we would have the bulk of the draft application for your review with a detailed budget of what we're looking for and what the money would be spent on. Something other than just the potentially $10,000.
All right.
Yep, that was to respond to John, to have you something to look at tonight, to be more specific than the conversations we've had.
Yep.
I hope it goes without saying, and I'm a little, goes without saying, we're asking your permission to apply for the grant. If we get it, you can accept it or not, just to be clear. In other words, we're asking you to let us keep moving forward. If you see it and at the end there's a problem or something, then you just don't take the grant.
Is there would there be any fees associated with denying?
No.
No, not at this point. You
Oh,
haven't committed to anything. The only, the things you'd be committing to would be if there's any kind of match value that is being asked for once you finish the budget. And as they mentioned, that could be either in kind or it could be cash. So they could ask for either or none of it. So there's some commitment there. This is a village street, so you're also committing to, some maintenance you know, the maintenance and upkeep of whatever ends up getting built there. And so that is also a commitment that you just need to be aware of. And then, I don't know, Jim, it sounds like it's still up in the air as to whether the EI would prefer a permanent set of fixtures versus a temporary set of fixtures. And you've been using the term quick build a lot, at least in a lot of the email correspondence I've seen going back and forth, which makes me think maybe you're leaning towards a temporary thing to sort of see how it looks, how the public at large reacts, you know, to this new crosswalk and the traffic calming efforts that would be there with the planters. And that's an approach. It was kind of left open-ended in the scoping study. There were, as Jim had indicated and is indicated in the plan here, there were 3 different proposals that were put together by Dubois and King, the engineer that worked with the village to do the scoping study. But there was never really, you know, a decision that was made as to which of those plans was a strong preference. They offered 3 different plans. The ad hoc committee, the scoping steering committee that was put together discussed all 3 of them. Even within the committee, there didn't seem to be, you know, a strong agreement about which of the 3 preferences people wanted to go with. So it was just put in the plan as, here are 3 options. And it sounds like you guys are leaning towards maybe the temporary plan, but you're still discussing it, and you'll bring that back next meeting, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
I feel like from a maintenance standpoint, temporary would be the only way to go. Snow plowing and whatnot.
Yeah, like-
Well, and they're still pretty permanent in terms of the fact that if I walk across the street, I'm not gonna be moving one.
Right. No, but
In case we had to move it to plow or
Right,
something, you know. the next
then it would
planters,
be feasible.
If we could lift them up a little back. or
pick them
something
up for the
like
winter,
that.
put them out in the spring. I don't know what.
Well,
We're not there yet, but
That
And I
element,
think sorry, Jim, the
No, go.
temporary versus permanent, with the curb and the curb ramps, which is something, the quick build lets you test some things out to make sure that it works before you make it permanent. So it's not necessarily an either or proposition, it's a, let's try this,
make that even.
see that it works, and then you could opt to make it permanent, at some point in the future if you want to. Now, obviously, the planters you want to pick up and move for plowing purposes.
sure, that's what I was talking about. Was just
Yeah,
the planters,
that's
So-
not the planters, my guess.
Yeah.
not the sidewalk entrance.
Is there a deadline to have the funds spent by?
Elizabeth?
You have to, the project must be completed by April 25th of 2024. So, and award announcement
I didn't know that.
on or about April 25th, 2022. So you would have 2 years, which I think is a really long time for this project. If you don't have it done by April 2023, I'd be surprised.
I think there's, a lot of little pieces to this. I think the permanent, non-permanent, to me, more relates to regulatory agency issues than it does to, you know, what I might want or need, or when I say what I think our group might need, I'm just gonna use that word, okay, for the moment, or I'll use we. But, my own sensibilities are, part of what this is to do is to practice and try things and keep them moving ahead. And without, you know, spending tons of money, to try to see if things can go in a different way, in a slower way, calmer way. My own opinion then would be is that the right way to do this is to get money for the whole thing. And if we can, in the grant, and try a temporary, meaning not cutting the curbs and not doing that, but putting in the planters and line striping, and have a 6-month evaluation period or some comment period. And then everybody said, hey, this is the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, let's try something else, and then we could execute the finality of it, meaning cutting the curbs and do the this and that. I'm saying this, and I know that Elizabeth will put her in another place to do this, in regards to massaging the grant in such a way to make that happen. But I also think there's nothing wrong, if we have that long to do it, then that means we haven't done it yet while we're trying it, right? We have some deadline, which we can say, okay, now we gotta, do it or not. And then, not unfortunately, but again, make it more, possibly more complicated, is that when Greta applies, I'm hoping that you will vote for her to apply for the next round of grants, which is the final planning and the construction dollars to make this happen, that,
Engineering study.
engineering and all that.
Vital Village.
The Vital Village,
Yep.
right, the 2.1 or the 2.75, wherever that ends up, being, you probably have the answer to that before you even had to finalize this, if you know what I'm saying, kind of. There were 4 options for that area, whereas the other places were pretty much more dialed down.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, we'll look forward to that request next week and.
Next time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next
Yeah,
meeting.
2 weeks, yeah. Used to.
Get a break.
A meeting a
break
week,
this
yeah.
next week.
Yes, we won't have to do it
Yeah, don't
this
come
week.
next week, I'm really
All right, up next, American Legion Post 42 request for banners on Depot Street.
So I put a copy of the board's January 11th minutes in your packet and highlighted the discussion you had had with Dan Cunningham from the American Legion requesting some special veterans and first responder banners. They're asking permission to put along Depot Street. And you'll see at the conclusion of that discussion, the board had indicated some concerns about just, safety issues, space, enough along the utility pole in order to put the banners in. And you had asked for some contact with head lineman Dave Westcomb from the village's electric department, and sort of an indication from Dave as to whether he felt that this was doable project or not before you gave approval for the Legion to go ahead and do this. So there have been a couple different discussions with Dave. Dave has indicated to me now that he feels comfortable enough with what the Legion has indicated to him they want to do, that he'll give his blessing to this as long as you guys are okay with it. So go ahead, Gary.
I had a call from Gary Fisk, yesterday. They were wondering if they could put the banners on the sidewalk side of the poles, so they can lower them down a little closer to the ground, and it would be interrupting the traffic. So that was a question he asked me. I don't know if that was anywhere else, but he was questioning that. There was like 9 banners, but he's thinking about putting them on the sidewalk side of the
So on
pole.
the-
So you're
Seemed like
saying
that's
this
what
is
he-
another wrinkle in
That's
it?
what he called me yesterday. I didn't know if he had talked to you guys or not. He asked me.
I felt like that's what
First
we brought
time
that up in
hearing.
the
He did
last
mention
meeting.
that,
Yeah,
that was a chance, possibility, but
right. There's nothing set.
Either way, I think they have a little bit of freedom and
Right.
the location of the
I think a better
pole.
location on the backside, and you can put it down a little bit lower
Yeah.
and not interrupt the traffic or
And we
anything
could even
else.
keep our banners up on the
Right.
roadside if we
Well, what he was
Nobody
saying,
gets
wanted,
ripped out by
needed to.
trucks.
what he was saying is, well, can we use the brackets? And I didn't realize that we'd keep the banners up if we had the banners on the forward and on the backside, so he's looking for upper brackets, and I gave him the info for where I get them from, but I guess they don't sell them to only
Oh, so-
municipalities.
He wanted to use the village's brackets?
Only those 4, but,
Do we put the flags on those in the summer?
Yeah.
yes. But if they put them on the outside pole, it shouldn't interfere with our
No,
banners.
Absolutely
So
not.
basically, he has to use his own.
They gotta get.
Yeah, they
long
were
as you
saying
get
they were gonna supply their
Right.
own brackets, I
Well, he
believe.
was asking a question if,
I think as far as that question goes, it'd be a no if we're using
Yeah,
it.
whatever. Can't blame them for asking.
Yep. Yeah, if the board wishes to approve Post 42's initial request of hanging banners on Depot Street during the summer months, providing their own brackets, I'll hear a motion.
I'll move.
I'll
Eli with the
second.
first, Sandy with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's a good project.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, that's unanimous. Up next, traffic ordinance amendments and noise ordinance
Kind
amendments.
of water
You missed one.
allocation.
Water allocation, you missed one.
Oh, whoops, skipping myself here.
Yep.
Request for water allocations, on Water Tower Road in Berkshire.
Okay, so, I don't know if you saw the memo from you guys. Mr. Harness has 2 lots over on the tower property. He's been really helpful for himself and his son. He wanted to get permission to tap R16 main and then have a directional bore, make the road, tap it, and be off 2 curb stops to his house. I said, well, that has to go by you. We have plenty of reserve capacity. One thing, I do have some conditions that if you see on my memo, that I would require, like, he has to get a letter from the town of Berkshire saying they can drill the road. I wanted to hire a site contractor who can give us a certificate of liability insurance and can meet all OSHA trenching, and I think he's gonna end up hiring Mr. Goodhue, but that's what he was mentioning. And also, I only want 2 people to tap my line, either E.J. Prescott or this, McDougal. They do it all the time, because that's the main line. If we have problems, we're gonna shut the whole city, the whole village down to fix the line.
That's what I was wondering, if there's any lateral lines coming up that far. It is
That's
the main line from the
line.
reservoir.
If he makes a mistake on that tap, we shut the whole village down. So that's why I want E.J. Prescott or this Mike McDougal. They do it all the time. That's what they do for a living.
There must be a lateral coming up Water Tower that ends at village limits, must be.
It comes down from the reservoir.
Right.
Then down at the end of the water tower, it tees off, 8-inch goes towards the industrial park.
Well, what Sam's
There's-
saying is,
there's
how
no
are the
smaller-
houses tied in
Right.
on Water Tower?
Yeah, there are people tied in it.
But they're tied into the main, or
They're tied in the main. And part of the ones that are tied in the main was kind of when they did the line back in 77, was it, on that?
I think it was earlier.
Or whatever, that was part of the agreement for people going across their property. They got to get tapped on the main.
Right. So one other thing that just, I'm not saying you shouldn't consider this allocation request because of this, but I feel we would probably be negligent in at least not making you aware of this. So we do have other customers in Berkshire that are tapped into this line. However, all of those customers became customers of the Enosburg Falls Water Department through exchanges in allowing the lines to come through their property back when the line was built, and they actually had that access granted to them in their deeds. So this is the first request that we've had from a town of Berkshire property to tap into that line that didn't already have permission to do so because the lines went through their property and they had it written into their deed to be allowed access. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't still consider it, but I just want to point that out to you.
Does anybody know if there's gonna be any, like, easements? Because we're gonna have infrastructure in Berkshire Town? Like taxable infrastructure? By putting,
Only we pay taxes on our property in Berkshire, that's only we pay for Berkshire.
but it'd be fine if they put a line under the road? I know like V-Trans, if there's anything that goes
Well, that's
over
why,
under, it
that's
gets
the town,
easement.
that's why I want something in writing from Berkshire saying
Right,
they give them permission to bore, they're gonna bore underneath there with a 3-inch sleeve and put a 2-inch PVC line, and then come up and tee up with 2 curb stops and goes to his house. That's why.
so one pipe under the road that
Yeah.
tees on the other side, okay.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to have those conditions. And also, they can't start till April 1st, as per our ordinance. So you can't start digging till after April 1st.
Should we get written permission first before we approve?
That would be I mean, if, that's part of the,
I think that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Or you could say pending written approval from the
Yeah,
town
yeah.
of Berkshire.
yeah, that's why they just said they have to
Right.
get, we want a letter from the town of Berkshire saying they give them permission to bore.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the major
If you
hang up
read
at this
that
point.
memo, that's what it says.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I can see that may get sticky, but the
We
rest of
won't
it, I
know
don't.
until we know.
And that's
How many
why-
are they asking for? Just two single
One
lines?
tap, do 1 tap,
Right, I know, but
But
for
two
allocations.
2
allocations.
allocations. One for each house.
2 single-family homes.
Yep.
Would there be a shut off on their side of the road?
Yes, right, all right in property line. Usually, in most of our ordinances, the curb stop has to be right at the, like 15, 25 feet off the road at the property line. It's right at the, that's where we're responsible from the curb back to Main once they put it in. And they're
Okay.
responsible from the curb to their house.
Okay. So yeah, what do we think?
I think pending the information from Berkshire, as long as we get that, we don't think it's gonna
I suppose
cause any problems.
we can move the, as long as they meet all Gary's.
Yep.
Conditions.
Okay. I guess I will hear a motion to accept the water allocation request, for the Harness properties, given that they meet the requirements asked by the village, and, it'd be conditional that they get written approval from the town of Berkshire.
Yeah, he's got that in here.
Now, is the part in here about the only two people that you want to do the work?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
Should say EJ Prescott.
yeah,
and,
it's like the near fifth line up.
oh, yeah, okay. Sounds like it's all
Try to cover
covered.
all my bases.
Just because they gave you a free hat, right?
No.
So I
It wasn't
guess
free, I bought a little.
I'll, I'll make the motion.
Okay, Eli has the motion. Is there a second?
Second that.
Leonard with the second. All those in favor of accepting the water allocations as we just described, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Now we can move on to our traffic and noise
I've
ordinances.
been waiting.
Sorry for that cliffhanger.
The only ones we had questions really on before were the stop
I think you
intersections.
fixed the ones that were,
Yeah, so there were like 4 changes the last time you guys reviewed this draft ordinance that you had asked us to make. We've gone through and made those requested changes, so bringing this back as draft 2 for you guys. If there's anything else you want changed in this, let us know. If you're happy with it and you think you're ready to approve it, then we would need a motion to do so. But recall, this is, these changes were brought about in an attempt to try and make sure the village's speed limits as reflected in our traffic ordinance are also compliant with state statute. It was indicated to us by the sheriff's department that there were apparently some issues with some of the judges down at the Franklin County Courthouse in the way that the ordinances were written. They're old, they haven't been updated in quite a long time, some of them at least. And so the sheriff's recommendation was to have the village rewrite our traffic ordinance. And, so we've done so to try and get them in compliance, breaking out every single street in the village and naming the speed limit on each street, along with all stop signs and yield signs as well.
So the stop on Davis to Hayes is moved to Stonehouse, right? Correct?
we haven't moved it yet.
Right.
Right, but
in
it,
the, in here.
Yeah.
If you
The only
adopt
other
this, then-
question I got is, does it matter what order the streets are listed in for
No.
any reason?
I
Like,
No, I don't, it doesn't have to be alphabetical. if
no,
that's
no,
what
I mean,
you're
it
asking.
says like TH1 Main Street to Pearl Street. Well, you're not stopping going from Main to Pearl, you're stopping going from Pearl to Main. So I didn't know if it made a bit of difference or not.
As long as there was a stop sign there and stuff. And
I just,
don't use it very often anyway, so.
especially not the one at the end of Water Tower.
Or the one right here in the corner.
most of them really.
I think it's a consensus, not too many people use any of them. They're all California roll stops at best.
So if we were happy with the last draft and now everything's cleaned up, if the board wishes to make a motion to accept them.
I so move on that one.
I'll second it. It looks like all of our faux pas are gone.
All right, Eli had the first, Sandy had the second. All those in favor of accepting the traffic ordinance and noise ordinance drafts, say aye.
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 And those opposed, nay. Okay, we will see what happens with the public comment period on those.
Right, so just as a reminder, what happens next is we have 10 days to get a notification in newspaper. That has to be printed in a paper of, current circulation within the area within 10 days of tonight, 10 days of your adoption. The public then has 44 days as a comment period that they can, if they're not happy with the ordinance, they can challenge it, and they have to submit a petition to the village clerk requesting that the item go to a public vote, essentially, and then the trustees have to appoint a date to hold a public vote as to whether the public will approve your changes to the ordinance or not. If it's not challenged and nobody challenges it after the 44 days, then on the 60th day, it becomes law, it becomes the ordinance. So just a refresher on, the system that it has to go through in the schedule.
Is it going to St. Albans Messenger or?
Yeah, we'll try and get it in the messenger, yeah.
Okay,
Can we, Sam, Jack, can we put it in our usual places just to let people to know where to look for it, like on Facebook, from Park Forum, like we do everything else?
you mean like a link to the draft?
Yes, exactly, because I know with our parks permit, I think it was, or there was a permit from a couple of years ago, people said they didn't know about that time, so just help with the public awareness.
I don't think that's a bad idea. Wanna put it on Facebook?
Just put a link, shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, just a link to the two drafts if that's okay.
That way we're giving everybody
And then
ample opportunity.
maybe our Facebook page?
So Facebook, village, website,
Did you say Front Porch Forum too, Heather?
She did.
Okay.
FPF.
all
I
three of
did.
those, okay?
Okay, we can do that. Next up, Town of Enosburg request for rescue service assistance with the ARPA fund.
Noise ordinance.
We just did the noise ordinance, we? Traffic and
We
noise?
did traffic.
Oh, okay.
They're two
Actually,
different
Sam
ones.
said-
Where am I tonight, huh?
He did
Number
say
seven.
traffic and
He
noise.
did, you
Yeah.
said traffic and noise.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did?
I thought
Oh,
it
I'm
was on
sorry.
traffic.
Yep.
Okay,
No,
I had them,
you
because they're
said
two
traffic
different
and
ordinances.
noise.
Okay, so just so I'm clear then, the motion you made, did it also include the noise ordinance then?
I thought it
Fine to me.
did,
You
but
said, you said traffic
We-
and noise.
we can review noise again if we'd like. But I think that was under the same,
Just out of curiosity, what were the fundamental overview changes to the noise ordinance? If there's a
Well-
lot of them, then
We
no.
have
but-
them.
There's not a ton of them. The purpose for the amendment to the noise ordinance was really to attempt to discourage loud exhaust systems from vehicles in the
You
community.
know those truck mufflers?
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard some of
I have
the,
several.
the custom, you have several, right?
You may wanna take one
My
off.
four cylinder,
Right. So,
puts it right out.
you know, I'm sure you've heard the customized, exhaust systems that are extremely loud. So
Okay.
that's basically what the purpose of this is. There is also a couple other things though in here, like sound amplification systems, so very loud car stereos.
or motorcycle
Or,
stereo.
or motorcycle stereos, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so basically it's motor vehicle sounds.
Good, thank you, that's all I need.
Yep.
Thank you. For one.
Just trying to help the quality of life a little.
I can't have any-
Throwing them out singing in the corner of the park.
All right, do we want to have a quick discussion on noise, or are we all set on that too? Just for clarification, I will hear a motion to accept the noise ordinance draft.
Remove we accept.
Sandy with the first, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Leonard with the second, all those in favor say aye,
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
and those opposed nay. All right. Now can we move on to the Town of Enosburg request for rescue service
I
funds?
was not here.
Yeah, so I can tee this up for you guys a little bit. I put a copy of the letter from the Town of Enosburg Select Board in your packet again. You have reviewed and discussed this agenda item once before. Have a good night, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Thank you.
We received some follow-up information as a result of the last discussion that the Board of Trustees had. One of the concerns that came up was just the division that at least we perceived during those first discussions about, you know, sort of the issue of double dipping, and if the town's population also included the village, which it does, then is it really right to come back and ask the village to contribute some of its ARPA funds towards a town service? So Billy Joe Draper, as a result of some conversations apparently between Larry Jarvis and Sam Valancourt, shared with me some information that she pulled up that she got from the ARPA distribution funds themselves, showing that apparently when the ARPA funds were divided, because the state decided they would give separate contributions to village and town municipalities, apparently they did actually take the population out of the village from the population of the town. And so that's what this little graph in the back from Billy Joe Draper is showing, the population breakdown between town and village. And clearly, you know, the town's population in this graph is not showing the village in it. It also has, you know, the breakdown of which, what each of the two municipalities received based on that population breakdown from the ARPA funds. So the town offers that as, you know, some further evidence as to their justification for making the request to the village.
So yeah, as John said, I called Larry last Friday and we had a discussion regarding this. We cleared up some confusion because the ARPA funds, like you said, are split. But we also brought up the sustainability aspect of this. And I guess there's a 5-year contract that just came up, and that's why there's such a hike, like such a deficit, I guess. And the ARPA funds will be used to cover that. Because I know there have been some comments about the questionable sustainability of municipalities contributing extra funds each year to the ambulance service. But I guess as far as I can understand, it would be a one-time thing.
Well, I suppose one way to look at it is it's a service we can't really do without. And I think they've got some rather major issues, so maybe this will help. I think they've got some issues they also need to work on that don't have anything to do with money.
So the increase is because they're going to a 5-year contract, or why is it such a drastic increase?
From what I can understand, there's a bunch of equipment that they needed in order to, I guess, renew the contract. So they had to make a bunch of significant one-time purchases to a lot of acronyms that I didn't quite know, but medical equipment.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't be.
So the contract has been renewed or will be renewed?
I think it has. I don't know a lot of specific details, but just the gist of our conversation was that there was a lot of expenses this year, and it won't be happening again next year.
I can get on board with it as long as it's a one-time contribution.
Are we assured though it's just a one-time, or are they gonna come back?
If we,
Well, if they come back again, we can just
right,
say
we
no.
can discuss it again.
But using the ARPA funds, we would be paying our half, I guess.
And we will benefit the entire community.
So that being said,
It might be a worthwhile topic for a future joint meeting.
yeah, we also discussed that too.
Sustainability.
And they were supposed to get back to us with some dates on when we could have a joint meeting. I'm not sure if they did or not.
I haven't
You haven't heard
heard.
anything, Billy Joe? All right, so all that being said, if the board is willing to accept the town's request for our ARPA funds being allocated to the ambulance service, I will hear a motion.
One time.
Yes. I'll hear a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second that.
Eli had the first, Leonard had the second. All those in favor say aye.
Alright?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right. Make sure I'm not skipping one here. We're on road paving projects next with Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. Documents need to be approved.
Take that on.
This is regarding the paving project that we did last year. The board had voted to go with Vermont Bond Bank. We missed the summer pool application that was done before we even had voted, so we're in the winter pool. What I have here is the resolution and all of the documents that we need to close on this loan. Right now, they have a tentative date set for February 24th, so we have to get these back to the attorney. Are there any questions on the resolution before I?
So we missed the summer pool?
Yeah, by the time we had voted on it and approved it, the summer pool closed actually before I came on board. It's pretty early in the spring. Like we started this application process in December. It takes a couple months, so they'll close on the loan in February, and we should be dispersed the funds early March, I believe. Right now, we covered the project with an interfund loan from the wastewater, so we'll essentially get the funds, pay back the wastewater department. The first principal loan, we won't have to start paying on the principal of this until 2023. We'll just have to make a couple small interest payments this year on the loan, and it's the 12-year note. But yeah, they're very specific with their application. There's only 2 times a year that you can apply with them.
And the resolution also has to be approved. You'll see it's a rather lengthy resolution there. It's over 3 pages long. We can go through it and read it all if you want. I don't mind doing that, but I think if you just agree that you approve the resolution, that's mainly what they're looking for.
I also am gonna need signatures, so I color coded it for you. The yellow tabs, everybody needs to sign. The red tabs, only Sam signs, but you also need to sign on the yellow too. Heather, we have the 4 signatures, but if you would like to sign, if you can stop in tomorrow or Thursday, I won't send it back till Friday. So if you wanna stop in and sign off on that as well.
You can do that.
I think it's good.
It's very exciting news.
It is.
Okay, if everyone agrees to the resolution and certificate, I will hear a motion to accept them.
I move we accept.
Second.
Sandy with the first, Eli with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Alright?
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Aye.
All right. Do we want to sign these when they're packing up for executive?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do a bunch of other stuff for me to sign too. Okay. Up next, Sqrp report.
So this is, nothing super exciting to report on this, but this is year end for 2021 Sqrp report. As you guys are aware, we have to have Sqrp report each quarter on the agenda. So this one is for the year end 2021. We did really well in all of our performance standards, I think overall. We did miss our Katie numbers, which is the customer average interruption duration, by just 0.1%, which
Lord.
I still think is very good. So we may end up getting a notification from the state that because we missed that Katie number by 0.1%, we have to pay a fine. But recall, the fines, as we changed our tariffs for our electric department, actually end up getting paid to ourselves. They end up going into our electric department towards tree trimming services. Used to be, we actually had to pay those fines out to other parties, but we changed that back in, I think, 2010, if I'm remembering right. And now the fines are just paid into the electric department and go into our tree trimming services. So, but we'll find that out later in the spring. Usually it's like around April or so, I think, when the state notifies us whether they feel a fine is in order and how much that's supposed to be. But they know too, because they approved the tariff, that it just goes back into our electric department.
So what is customer average interruption duration? Like how long somebody's without power?
Yeah, right. So you have, towards the bottom there, the reliability performance
Yeah.
measures. You've got a couple of different things. You've got what's called a safety number, which is the system average interruption frequency. So how much interruption you have within the whole system. And then the Katie number, which is the customer average, which is different than the system average. And we made our safety number, but we did not make the Katie number, but just by a hair. I still think that's very, very good performance. And all of the other performance standards, we were well within that baseline figure that the state has established for Enosburg Falls Electric Department. So on the whole, I do think we did very well in 2021 with our performance standards.
So that's 1.1%.
Yeah, that's right. That's like 1/10%.
Now, if you miss those numbers and you get fined, is that a set rate or is it a calculated percentage of how much you missed it by?
The state calculates that. I can't off the top of my head remember how they come up with the calculation, but
So it could be very little.
it could be very low. And
Should be.
well, I agree. I agree.
Is that 1% of 365 days, 24 hours a day? Like, what's it 1%?
I don't know
of?
the form. Oh, to one. What do you mean, the 1/10?
That's,
How to calculate the Katie number?
right. It says annual rolling average 1.1. If I'm reading that
I think
right.
he's asking
Right.
how we come up with a.
Right. What is it?
Right.
1% of,
Right.
or 0.1% of?
You know, I don't want to give you bad information here. That's a good question, Eli. I think it has to do with incidents through the year.
Like number of incidents or something?
Yeah, they've got it listed as the baseline number, and they don't really identify, whether that's hours or days, but I believe it's days. Like how many incidents in the year a customer had and how long were they out during that incident.
Of course, and that so varies from incident to incident.
Well,
and
right.
How fast anybody can get back
Right,
online anyway.
Exactly. I mean,
And I
there's a
assume-
lot of factors
Yeah.
that play into both the Katie number and
That
the
no one
safety
can do
number.
anything about.
Right,
A
like
lot
in
of times you
2014
can't.
big ice storm, I'm sure this
Yeah.
one looked a lot
They
different.
must,
I'm sure.
must change the
Or-
number based on.
Or if somebody
Weather
crashes
activity or
into a
something.
utility pole and takes it out, we have no control over that either, and that happens unfortunately too frequently. So yeah, there are a lot of factors that go into all of these baseline numbers. But, the bottom line is, this is how they panned out, and unfortunately,
It's what it is.
right, the Katie baseline, we missed it by just a hair. But I still think overall that we did really well in the 2021 performance standards for the electric department.
Good, and we will be proud of ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, there's no other questions for Sqrp report. We can move on to manager's report.
Okay. Get to that. Oh,
It's on the very back.
oh, nice. Okay, just a few quick things here. First, I want to make the board aware that per your request at the January 25th meeting, the village has filed a motion to intervene with the Public Utility Commission in the Franklin Foods digester expansion docket. This was completed by our attorneys, Primer, Piper, Eggleston, and Kramer, specifically Eli Emerson from that firm. So just want to make you guys aware we did follow through with that. The intervention is in place on that docket. Next thing, I just want to make you guys aware also that I contacted Kelly Maddox again to see if she would be available to write the village's minutes for what will be an informational meeting, not the annual meeting this year again. Excuse me, which will be held March 7th at 6:30 p.m. Again, as a reminder, to be held electronically, and she has agreed to do so. So Kelly will be taking the minutes again this year for...
So we're going to be strictly Zoom that night?
Yes, or telephone, yeah. So we do have a minute taker in place for that meeting. And then the last thing I wanted to ask was, this is kind of it's a housekeeping item, but I think an important one, something that we hadn't gotten to yet. But as was the case last year, because of the all-Australian ballot process and electronic informational meeting, what normally would have been our annual meeting on March 8th is now going to be our voting day to cast your Australian ballot vote. So, but that's still the second Tuesday of the month. So technically, normally it would be a regular meeting day if you weren't holding your annual meeting. Last year, the trustees felt it was better to cancel that meeting. The feeling was it may, bring some confusion to people in the community, to voters. If they were asked to cast that vote by Australian ballot that same day, while at the same time, potentially, the Board of Trustees was holding a regular meeting that has nothing to do with, the annual meeting and the things that people are being asked to vote on by Australian ballot. Felt that could create some confusion in the community, and so last year the board voted to just cancel that meeting and not hold a regular meeting that day.
They had just the one, that one.
You had the informational meeting the night before on the 7th.
Outside of that.
Right. So, so asking the question, do you guys want to do that again this year, or do you want to try and hold a regular meeting on the 8th?
I find it kind of odd to hold a meeting on the 8th when we asked them to be voting on stuff that's us anyway.
Yeah, that was the conclusion the board had last year.
Yeah, I can see the confusion of showing
Yes.
up to a village meeting thinking it's
Right.
the annual village meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not, so. I'm all right with just canceling.
Say we do that same,
Yeah, let's cancel.
Okay. Okay, I'll get that notified then, get the word out. And that was it for manager's report.
All right, thank you, John. Other business? Anybody have any other business to discuss while in normal meeting session? Hearing no other business, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations in which premature public knowledge may compromise the position of the municipality.
I'll move.
Eli with the first,
I'll second that.
Leonard with the second. All those in favor of entering into executive say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Aye.
All right.
My understanding.
Good night.